First up, I'm seeing that the kitchen extractor fan appears to go out, but I'll just check it. That's often an issue. I'm seeing some localized rot here. That's probably a sink there originally.
Yeah.
So you get some there. So obviously all the plaster's been chipped off the base of the wall, which suggests to me that a damp proof has recommended that, because it's only gone up to that height. But I wouldn't put damp proof as impermeable slurry in. I would put in either dry lining, which is just plasterboard, or I would use, I'll show you an example. I would use a thin insulation that is relatively expensive. It's called thermal, space therm. And the benefits, the few products. So you want to have something that's breathable, so it allows vapour in and out. So this one is it's a simple lining paper, but there wouldn't be much point in having that on top of new plasterboard. But what you might think of is this. It's called space therm. I've got the product name here. I've used it in a property recently myself. It's very thin. It just gives you a bit of insulation. It's breathable.
And that's instead of plasterboard, or?
It can be instead of plasterboard. I'll give you some more information on plastering it, because it's not easy to plaster it. You have to use what's called blue grit on top of the space therm to get the adhesion and then you have a final skim coat of plaster on top of that. But that's probably how I would go. You have blue grit on this. This is to give you adhesion.
Right.
Then you'd actually use screws into the wall initially to get the bonding and adhesive, and then blue grit on top, and then it can be skimmed, and you'll see that it's not going to be very proud of the existing wall, so you're not going to lose space. And the benefit of the three benefits of this are you're going to get insulation.
Yeah.
So heat insulation.
Yeah.
You're going to get sound insulation, some sound insulation from it.
Yeah.
So you're not going to hear your neighbours as clearly.
Yeah.
On the sides. And it's vapour permeable. So you don't have the issue that you get with slurry. So I see the plaster's been removed from here.
Yeah, there's a vent. If you feel inside the old fireplace, you can feel a draft. I don't know to what extent the chimney is open, but you can feel
Okay, well I'll discuss that in a sec. But do you see how you've got this area here? Now I wonder whether you've got some hygroscopic salts here, and the risk if you put anything aqueous onto this wall, the hygroscopic salts will come through.
Right.
But this, because it's essentially it's like a fleece.
Yeah.
It's a material. The water isn't going to go through that, and so you shouldn't get hygroscopic salts unless you get extreme cases of like a leak or that sort of thing. And anyway, when you do get hygroscopic salts, it's very simple way of solving it. But I'm looking at the way everything is. I'm guessing you had a case of hygroscopic salts here, which often people say is rising damp, but it's nothing to do with rising damp.
Yeah.
It comes from chimneys. But you can get those same salts from rising damp, but in this case, I don't think it. You're in London. You don't get rising damp in London because the groundwater is pumped out.
Yeah. But could I, in theory, just because I need to, because my lease extension is going to be like a fucking fortune, I need to try to save money on the renovation.
You could dry line it.
Like just with plasterboard, and that will basically be.
Yeah.
Because originally I was going to get a guy, I thought, let's do the old-fashioned way, not like slurry, but like the old-fashioned wet plastering.
Is this external wall here?
No, this backs onto the number 20 Road and Gardens.
Yeah. So it's not external. In which case, this is beneficial, but it's expensive.
Right.
I would just dry plasterboard. What you want, big tip. you need to use a non-aqueous, so like plastic
Yeah.
type adhesive.
Uh-huh.
If you use an aqueous adhesive, the hygroscopic salts will just go through the aqueous adhesive.
Yeah.
I'll find like epoxy,
Epoxy resin or...
type expandable foam that's used for adhesive. That'll work because
Yeah.
that's essentially plastic. It's non-aqueous.
Yeah. Let me just check on. I'll push you bring it down so I don't get worried about it.
It's useful to have a damp meter to tell how dry a wall is, whether it's drying out. When it's a flat masonry wall like this, so this is on masonry, that's telling me that it's dry.
Right.
And you'll see that it seems to be damper there than there, but that's because this uses radio waves and it will naturally bounce back from a smooth surface like that more than it will from a rough surface like that. So don't worry too much about the absolute number. It's a relative thing, and it's depends on the material. So it's getting down towards the base of the wall. That sound of dampness or the sound of the damp meter is a useful indicator. But so there's also a surface one, and maybe a surface can be more useful in this environment. I'm going to take part of it off, and if we do, but these are doing salts, and that says 20 or even below 30 is really what you're looking for. And that's pretty dry. So no. Well, if it's above 30, but it's the water and salts that's the thing to worry about. These bays, you've got a risk of dampness from the outside. Now that's interesting.
I think that's why the air brick was.
Yeah. Well, what it does is it cools down this area and creates. You see, you got. I mean, it's damper here, and the reason why is, I mean, I assume you haven't been heated for a while anyway, but
it's pretty warm without any heating, as you can kind of tell. But yeah, normally the heating would have been there at the other end of the wall, but I wanted to think about installing some plumbing to get like a radiator here, sort of like water sealing, sort of heat up this bay area a bit.
Put insulation behind the radiator. Good tip.
Okay.
Because the biggest heat loss is where you're putting the most heat next to it, the greatest energy.
Yeah.
Is if anywhere you want to insulate is where you've got the cold. So bays will tend to be cold, and I put insulation around bays.
Okay. Would you strip everything here and just redo everything and like?
Yeah, you pretty much might as well.
And just do with plasterboard.
Yeah, I would use the. So I actually just renovated a property using this base therm for the lower section of wall, and then the higher section of the wall I've used the cheaper Celotex. So Celotex is this type of material here. It's a sort of plasticky material. You don't want to have it for the lower sections of the wall because it sweats and it will cause the wall to become damp and you'll lose energy. Yeah. So what you gain, you end up losing, and you can also get rot in the subfloor void.
Okay.
But if you use it on the, if you have the space therm below that, then you've got the vapour coming out here, and you've got the a cheaper insulation for a majority of this.
So you don't think it would be sufficient just to redo what's like been taken off?
You can do. It comes down to money, and I'm telling you what I would do. Yeah. But the time it takes to take this off is relatively minor. minimal. It will give you a better finish if it's more consistent, but it doesn't mean that it, a good plasterer could probably make it look good.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, you've got nice curved edges here. You can find it really difficult to get plasterers to put the curve in. They always want to use metal beading. I managed to persuade plasterers to do it. So if you find a plasterer and just say that I want that replicated, then
fine.
you might get successful.
Okay.
You've had a bit of a leak here as well. Oh no, maybe not. No.
Yes.
Just,
No. There was something, and that was in the damp report that I sent you. That they mentioned that there was a
leak behind the bathroom.
The ceiling where the bath was.
Yeah.
It was a bit of
Damp.
a gap.
Yeah, you can see.
This goes into the kitchen there.
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought of, the flooring. I mean, I was sort of eager to see.
Well, I'll have a look underneath.
Yeah.
It's what's called suspended timber floor.
I was going to, assuming everything is okay, instead of putting stuff over it, just sand it, stain it, and varnish it.
Well, what I'm going to recommend, I think that's a great idea, but what I'm going to recommend is having access to the subfloor void. And just keeping a monitor, like a data logger or something like that.
Right.
So you see how this piece of timber is broken.
Yeah.
You can lift it up. Maybe this one lifts up. Okay, it'll take a bit more persuasion, but it should be. I should be able to lift it up. Oh, there we go. And just have a monitor in underneath there. So you just want to make sure that there's no leak in the subfloor. Otherwise, you have a risk of condensation forming above the damp-proof course and then causing rising damp-like symptoms. But I'll just keep access there. So I'll send you lots of reports on hygroscopic salts. But this is one that I found. I took a sample from an owner. I think it probably feels a bit dry now because it's probably below. But this piece of paper is damp to the touch in humid conditions, and that's because it's got hygroscopic salts, calcium nitrate.
Okay.
And it would normally a piece of paper like that would normally dry up, but because it's got these salts, and they have calcium nitrate has a specific relative humidity of 50% at normal temperature.
Yeah.
Just like, so I put these your data loggers in this. These got salt, normal salt, so table salt and water. And table salt has a specific relative humidity of 75%, which is what I use to calibrate.
Okay.
So it's the same concept, and I think that's what you had there, and I think that's why your mother was led to believe she had rising damp, but it's not. It's caused by the salts that come from the chimney breast. All you need to do is to stop them moving onto the new surface. They're not a source of water. They're in dynamic equilibrium. That means they're constantly evaporating and condensing in cycle.
Got it.
So it's nothing to be worried about. And if they ever did come through, for whatever reason, all you need to do is use an oil-based primer like cover stain, like Zinza cover stain. Very simple.
Okay.
So we're talking about aqua panel, which is a good idea for the bathroom. So press that calculator sign and then export sign, export CSV, or open CSV, and then select, and then just send it to myself, simon@dampsurveys.com. There you go. And takes a moment. Maybe you haven't got a. Are you using?
I'll just hotspot myself from my work phone because it's shit data.
So it's not ideal. It's reducing the airflow. Having all of this here. I would actually take it away. You want to keep airflow. This is painted, which is not brilliant, and it's just looking a bit rough there. But there's a bit of water has got in here through the top there, and is causing calcium sulfate salts from the mortar to crystallise under the paint, and this causes micro cracking, increasing the speed of dampness. So, but what's happens is that you get a damp external brick that causes heat loss, but I don't see it penetrating all the way through. You just need to have it painted regularly. Do you see all of these little micro cracks? And lots of micro cracks equals quite a lot of water being absorbed. You've got timber here. It needs to be painted. It doesn't feel like you've got rot yet, but I think you'll get timber rot fairly soon if you're not careful. So you see that green, that's an indication that water is overflowing, probably from the hopper there, but possibly even from the gutter all the way up at the top. You'll have to have a look during a rainstorm. I don't think it's particularly going to affect you. It's got lead flashing. I'll have a look on top of that as well. Yeah, this is going to cause heat loss. This wall here is a thermal fin. Now your neighbours had damp proofing treatment, and I'm just going to talk it through. And what I recommend you don't do is what your neighbours have done. Let's have a look through here. It's difficult to see. I was just talking to the camera. Another survey that I've done, that if you have too high a speed, it's noisy, and people don't like it, so they turn it off, and it becomes counterproductive. I think that's fast enough, and also this light turns it off immediately.
I wanted to get a humidistat.
I would get a continuous flow bathroom extractor fan. They normally have humidistats as well. The interesting thing with this is it's raised up. I have that at another property today, 2 in a row.
Yeah, well, I had the electrician come on. He actually figured it out that it was going through there, and I was like, "This is very good."
Anyways, I've needed a bit. Or you're getting. I mean, it's a kitchen fan speed. You're getting 40. It's a howling gale. When it comes to walls, you want to, as far as possible, be homogeneous. Obviously, I've talked about something that isn't homogeneous, but that's practical reasons. But you don't want to change the material too much between walls. And I think that if you had a separate plasterboard and going on to plaster and then the whole thing replastered, I think you'll get a crack appearing where the old plaster is left.
Fine. Okay.
So anyway,
in terms of the things that need to be done here, that's so I can tell the freeholder.
Yeah. I mean, whether they'll get on with it is another matter. But do you see all these cracks? These micro cracks. They will let water in.
So it needs to be repainted, or?
So wire brush down to as far as possible, and then repaint it with the same paint as you have here. It's not a big deal in this case, but over time it will eventually become a big deal and could cause penetrating damp or dampness of the bricks, which loses heat insulation and therefore increases the risk of condensation. This isn't affecting you directly, but this is just an example of how you get calcium sulfate salts blistering.
And so they need to strip all this out and redo it. And that's the same reason why you have this, or no? It's like
that's
rusting.
rust on. I mean, it's the fact that it hasn't been painted for a while. That's basically it.
Fine.
It needs to be done sort of every. Most contracts will say every 7 years, something like that. I don't know what yours does. And there's that needs dealing with all the way up. And I would say this hopper is probably overflowing. But have a look during a rainstorm. That's the best way to know.
If it's overflowing, then
well, then it's
tell
probably it's either blocked or it's not. I mean, it looks slightly lopsided, but it's difficult to tell from this angle. Ideally, that is drained away to over there. How you would do that here, I don't know, whether you use some sort of guttering system. I mean, it's probably fine as it is, but just be aware that water that's coming down here is liable to be absorbed into here rather than go to the drain. It could pond. The drain looks okay, but again, have a look during a rainstorm and see what's happening. I don't think it's ongoing, but you've got signs of woodworm here. Just looks really old. You can spray it with permethrin. I'll give you links to doing that, but I'm just highlighting it as a potential risk. The thing here, though, is your subfloor is very shallow, so relatively easy to fix any decay if you did have it. It looks like woodworm. It's difficult. I would guess that it's an odd one, because I would guess it looks like wood weevil. And wood weevil's normally accompanied by cellar rot, which I don't actually see any cellar rot, so it's difficult to know for sure. And that's why I think it's really old. They both need dampness, so moisture is the trigger, as it were, or what makes it tasty. It's a type of beetle, so wood weevil is a type of insect, a beetle. It's got a life cycle of typically a few years. So what you want to do is spray it. Wood weevil actually doesn't need spraying. So possibly in this case I wouldn't worry about it. And I can't see any signs of the most common form of woodworm, which is common furniture beetle. So I actually wouldn't worry about it in this case, but I'm just bringing it to your attention, really.
That's reassuring.
So, well, my report will be a starting point. You'll get rid of the damp by following all my recommendations. The hygroscopic salts you'll deal with as I've recommended, and I would have some degree of insulation here, just because it will be more comfortable. Bathroom, kitchen, just get good extractor fans. I mean, the main cost is the electrician rather than the fan itself, so you might as well get a good one. Continuous flow bathroom extractor fan. Kitchen fan, I actually didn't, I wasn't able to check it, but let's assume it goes out. And also just have a dehumidifier, running 24/7, particularly if you dry clothes internally. So the kitchen fan.
I thought it might go, if you could go down here.
So that, I imagine it works well. You can test where you'll be able to see by seeing whether this flips open when it's on. And you have it. The floors often cause rising damp-like symptoms. The reason why is, even though this is possibly on a suspended timber floor, hence the cracking, but it's because condensation will form on the cold stone, and it won't absorb the moisture, so it will amplify. Unlike wood will absorb moisture, stone won't. So it will just cause condensation on the stone and rising damp-like symptoms. I'm going to write up a report at some stage that I did about 6 years ago probably, where it was a property which had been damp-proofed. They had lots of damp-proofing, and that failed. And it was the leading damp-proofer in London, and they were recommending £16,000 worth of damp-proofing treatment. And it turned out that it was just the bathroom extractor fan that wasn't working. And that was a similar sort of situation, not far from here. So
I'll leave you to sort of the rest of what.
These are hygroscopic salts. A lot of people don't like the fact that I use damp meters. And the reason why is that salts will be picked up, but so will dampness. The interesting thing is that we have hygroscopic salts here. You can see the reflection. Those are hygroscopic salts there. So anyway, so below it it's dry, and then these are the salts. This is common around chimney breasts. In this case, they're just going to dry line it. But important with dry lining is the need to have an oil or non-aqueous base adhesive. Otherwise, the water will just come through the adhesive. And to know that it's hygroscopic salts are not a source of moisture. They're just drawing out the moisture from air. It's harder to tell dampness in a wall when it's been stripped. This interesting. That's just the metal there, metal in the brick. Interesting. Surprised I didn't get a higher number, but anyway. I normally use, there you go. Drier there than there. So metal in the brick is rusted now. So we're looking at the subfloor now. Oh, interesting. And then it's pretty dry. I've got a hygrometer going. So the air vent comes through there. Yeah, nothing really to worry about in the subfloor. It's a quick way of checking whether a wall is dry. And it seems to be fine. Brick is harder to do because it's uneven, but it will give you a quick sense. This one is pretty dry, but if we look over here, then we got dampness apparently there, but dry there, and it's actually to do with the metal in this wall. I don't know whether the metal's, well, presumably the metal's not there. It's dry lower down, so the metal will cause condensation. It's called interstitial condensation. Go on to surface mode. Yeah, so it's so that's the metal in brick. So it's not always a sign of damp, but it's a really good way of telling if the wall is dry. We're getting closer to the outside. There's going to be condensation from behind behind the curtain's damp itself. And you get poor insulation around here. So you should never take the reading as absolute, but it gives you an idea of what's happening. And it's consistently damp around the base of this wall, and you're getting mould here, and you're getting mould behind the curtain. And this, because the plaster's been removed, there's a lot of heat loss, but no air movement because of the curtains. Looking in another zone, and see what we can see. I mean, it seems fine. Asking me about the sockets. You're asking me about the sockets. You can see you get condensation, and there's rust there behind, and it will cause fusing, and that's why they will go often in high condensation. This through a thermal imaging camera. Do you see the heat loss you get in the corner? The primary reason you'll get, there are two reasons you're getting in the corner. One is that you get a lot of heat loss into the corner.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the corner actually, it's a bay, and it's unusual. You've got thick brickwork there, and then it's thinner there. But it's also because of the curtains. See, what happens with the curtains is curtains are stopping the heat from inside the property, so you'll get some natural heat from your neighbours, even though you're not heating it up. But this will trap the heat, and what's happening is that there was some dampness down there. You can actually feel that it feels quite moist if you feel the bottom of the curtain.
Yeah.
And you're getting dampness down there. So I would actually, you probably want to, well, if you can lift the bottoms of the curtains up to get some airflow, then it would be better. I'm guessing you're not going to keep the curtains long term.
Disgusting.
Well, yeah. So I'll add this to the report so you'll be able to see things. And there's some metal
all
there.
the sockets skirting board level don't work. Supposedly because of the damp issue.
Possibly, but
So I'm getting it rewired, but obviously I need to.
the reason why you get dampness, you get condensation around sockets, and the reason why is you get a lot of heat loss. The wire is going into the subfloor void, and the subfloor void will have low temperature because it's obviously connected to the outside.
Yeah.
So you're getting heat loss into the wire, and then it's going up into the socket. So you get a plume of condensation and mould around sockets. It's very common. You'll get it more on external walls, but you also get it on internal walls. And if you've got condensation in one socket, you're liable to get fusing and the whole ring going.
And the way to fix that or stop that, prevent that?
Well, to deal with the root cause, which will be vapour, and I believe from looking at it that the bathroom extractor fan might have been really fast, but it probably wasn't working when it needed to work, which is for the half an hour after the bathroom stopped being used. I'd say that's the primary one, and probably drying clothes internally. Kitchen extractor fan, I'll have a look. You can't really tell anything from that, but does it work if you?
I have no idea. I don't think you can push it on.
But a lot of people don't use it. Key thing to do is to follow what's called Jew's law, and that is to make sure the internal vapour, as expressed as a dew point, is always below the outside temperature. I'll put it in the report.
Okay.
And so long as you do that, you'll be fine with virtually everything. The only one is the hygroscopic salts, and that you're going to have to have a separate layer, as I described.
Yeah, like the dry lining.
Yeah, which can be with dry lining and plastic adhesive, epoxy, expandable film. So I've got this website that I've created called damp.ai/detect, and all you need to do is upload your files here. I've already put them into a folder, upload them, and then choose which wall you're going to have as your damp wall data and vapor source. And in this case, let's use To some extent, it doesn't matter because the property is vacant. So we're not going to see that much difference. But at the time of the survey, I believe the temperature was 10 degrees centigrade. So I'm going to, and it was on the 14th at about 12 p.m. So that puts in the temperature. And you'll see here is the relative humidity. So this is the surface relative humidity line. And actually it's reasonably good. And that's not surprising because it was relatively dry, uninhabited, and no major problems. If it was going above 85% for long periods of time, you might worry that you were going to get high surface relative humidity, ideal for mold growth, but I'm not seeing that. This line here is the dew point line, and you want to keep that dew point line below the outside temperature. It isn't too bad. I mean, if I do an analysis on it, so if I press this button, it will give the dew point compliance, which is only showing 36%. But given that it's an uninhabited property, it's less of an issue because of this vapor level here. You can see when the dew point line, the internal dew point line, is below the external dew point line, there is more vapor outside than inside, which you get in different times. This is the surface temperature line, and you seem to be being warmed up by your neighbors, I think. So I'm not seeing major problems, but use this going forward. And as I say, you can quickly flick between one and the other. So one you want to compare one to another. So in this case, I'm comparing the bay to the left reception wall, and the interesting thing here is also this line here, which is what's called the dew point differential, and that's telling you that there's more vapor in one area than the other. You'll see there's virtually nothing here, and that's because they're essentially in the same zone. You wouldn't expect to see any major differences. I mean, I'll do that again. Do you see this one is very close? So this is to be used going forward, and you'll see in the background I've been showing pictures of the quote you had for rising damp treatment. You absolutely do not have rising damp. You are in London. The groundwater in London is pumped out to 60, 65 meters below ground. You're in central London. If it wasn't pumped out, the tubes would flood and there would be major problems. It's been done since early Victorian times and probably before for industrial purposes. So you absolutely do not have to worry about rising damp in London. Nobody does. There should be no companies existing selling rising damp treatment in London. It's a fraud. It's a sham. It shouldn't be allowed. They are almost certainly saying that the hygroscopic salts that appeared to be in the chimney breast were as a result of rising damp, but in fact, it mainly comes from the burning of coal. And what I'm going to be recommending is that you essentially dry line it using a plastic adhesive, like expanded foam adhesive, and then the hygroscopic salts won't come through the absorbent layer. And to keep your costs down, you can use just dry lining throughout. So battens and plasterboard. It's very simple. It's very cheap. But I talk about insulation during the survey. So do have a look at that. And I'll put in some examples. But that's an additional cost. And really the plastering, I would say, it'll probably take somebody best part of a week to put up the plasterboard, and probably another 2 or 3 days to finish it, put in finishing plastering.